Hey everybody, this is Jason Key from SBGrid at Harvard Medical School. Thanks for joining today. We'll go ahead and get started. So today is yours truly, and I'm going to kick it off with our install client and sort of a general introduction section. If you have questions, go ahead and you can send them to me by chat. I have to admit that I have my slides full screen here, so I am going to check in periodically to make sure that those chats are coming through. The microphones, if you have microphones, those also work. So if you raise your flag, I can unmute you and we can just have a sort of normal discussion if there are any questions. So go ahead and raise your flag and I'll check in as things go along. With that, I'll get started. So just a quick intro. I think most people are going to be up to speed on this, but SBGrid is a nonprofit consortium based at Harvard Medical School in the Department of Biological Chemistry and Molecular Pharmacology, and we focus on structural biology computing. Our group is made up of structural biologists, IT professionals, software engineers, programmers. We're currently actually without a software policy advocate because our postdoc has moved on, but we have postdocs and students from time to time who work on projects related to structural biology computing. And our goal is really to minimize the technological barrier between researchers, data, and scientific results. So we want to accelerate the pace at which researchers can do what they're interested in by making software and computing work for them. So the way we do that, well, we do that in fields that are sort of under this umbrella of structural biology, X-ray crystallography, certainly, electron microscopy, NMR, molecular dynamics, and also some computationally intensive, not necessarily structural biology in and of themselves, but that sort of build upon structural biology, like virtual screening, computational chemistry, and applications like that would fall into those categories. We can consult on computing hardware and high performance computing. I'm the Exceed Campus Champion, and we also have Open Science Grid relationship where we can move workflows onto the big iron if that's something that you need. I actually just returned from TAC earlier this week, so I got to see Stampede 2, which was exciting. Very, very cool things going on down there in Austin. I think what we're primarily known for is our scientific software stack. So we've got about 400 applications, probably more than this at this point. They're supported on Mac and Linux. We also do sort of specialized builds for GPUs. We can do optimizations for specific hardware, and we often get some beta code or bleeding edge projects just to get into users' hands in a sort of testing mentality so that we can get code out there, get it out to a lot of people with the caveat that, this is early stage, but, give it a try and see how it goes. And then we can get feedback back to developers to let them know what users are thinking. Training is a big part of what we do. So we do these webinars. We also, we have workshops and conferences. Our last one was actually a Rely On that was earlier this year. We did Phoenix before that. So we're always looking to do workshops on titles or a series of titles, or maybe even just data processing in a field or a specific aspect of data processing. So if you have suggestions or ideas about that, reach out, let us know, because we want to make sure that the users are getting access to things that they need, that they think are interesting. I feel like we might have our finger on the pulse of that, but not always. So definitely let us know if we're not, if there's something you'd be interested in and you don't think we're on top of it. We provide access to support. So we have our wiki and portals. You can reach out to us by email. We have newsletters and mailing lists. So we try to support, mostly by email, but in some cases, we can do these sorts of webinar type arrangements as well. So just a quick overview. I want to just get started with my getting started with SBGrid. So I'm going to talk about installing software and running the software, mostly about installing the software. So we have three types of software install methods right now. One is the sort of complete site installation. This is sort of the legacy mode. I'll talk about that a little bit. Then I want to talk about our graphical install client that runs on Mac OS 10, and then our command line tools. So we have a new command line installation tool, runs on Mac and Linux. And it's a lot like a package manager, or like Yum or apt-get, or maybe pip if you're familiar with the way that Python manages its modules. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about running the software, and then turn it over to Carol. She's going to kick it off with capsules. So, all right, so installing software, site installation is our primary means of installing for large sites and labs. So this is sort of the standard mode of installation. It installs the entire software collection, so 400 plus titles, plus those include 3 versions of almost every one of those titles. So we try to include usually the 3 most recent, but sometimes it's, if there's, version 1, version 2, and version 3, and version 3 is vastly different from version 2, we'll keep version 2 around because people still are maybe using that older version, or maybe it can open files that version 3 can't. So that happens, but we try to make relatively sane decisions about what versions we keep. We include these sorts of large installs can include Mac OS and Linux all on one install, so that you can install this on a network file system and share it. That's the typical way to do this, and there's more details about that on our wiki page, but these are usually installed via some server onto a large file system that is then shared across many machines. The updates for these are automatic. We manage those. Here we have a system where the servers check in periodically, and we can flag those for updates. We don't have access to these systems or in any way. It's strictly a pull mechanism, but we can set an update specifically for a site and have a site update. And then these use the SBGrid admin script. If you've ever installed one of these, that would be familiar to you. I'm going to jump over to my terminal here and just give a quick rundown of this. This lives at programs. Let's see. Open that window up. Share SBGrid, bin SBGrid admin. And if you run this guy, you can get the help message here. So this script is the initial script to install for a site. It has just a few options. You can install with the -i flag. You can do a -u to force an install, and then you can run it in cron mode. So typically this runs as a cron job. It checks in typically every 15 minutes and checks for updates. And so then if there's an update, it will download those to your site. Some of the troubleshooting around this would be occasionally it can happen that the synchronization job can either fail, or the network can glitch somewhere between us and a site. So you can use the -u to clear that and get the install back on track. You can use the -t to run a test if you think that something might be wrong, your site didn't update properly. But it's generally a pretty simple and easy to troubleshoot sort of thing. If you have any questions and you're adminning one of these, just by all means reach out, let us know. This methodology for installing will be around for a while, but I think users are moving more toward more dedicated title-specific installations. Again, this is pretty large. This software branch is, with the Mac and the Linux, is over 500 gigs. So it takes a while to install and update. But if you're serving it out to 10 labs or 30 users, it's the right thing. It could be the right thing for your site. So a lot of places like to go that route. For an individual lab, or certainly for an individual workstation, you'd want to use one of the tools I'm going to talk about now. So back to the slides here. So we have a graphical installer that's available for Mac OS. It runs on Mac OS 10.9 to 10.12. And so 10.13, the High Sierra, is supposed to be released in a week. So for those of you out there who are thinking about updating, this is a big one. This one comes with a brand new file system, APFS. I've seen a few threads already warning people to maybe hold off and wait until others test the water a little bit to make sure that your software is going to work. I think that's a good strategy for this one, particularly on mission critical systems. So, and I'd say, you know, from our systems as well, like we're going to test and we're going to make sure it works, but, you know, bugs pop up and we're not going to be able to see them all immediately. So holding off is probably a great strategy. The graphical installation lets you pick the titles and the versions you want, and these are all performed by the user. So we don't have the ability to update these directly or force updates. To get started on this, you can go to the URL I have listed here. So I'm going to just give you a quick tour of the install client itself. So I'm going to jump over here to my client. So this is what the Mac install client looks like. You can see I've got over here in this column, we've got our packages, and there's a few headings there. Installed shows me what I have installed. Updates are pending updates. So there's nothing in here right now because my software is up to date. But if there were updates for a certain package, say EPMR 17 was installed, and it would be listed here, and you would be able to apply changes and apply that update. Pending shows pending actions, and so I'll show you some of those in a second. And then all here shows all the titles that are available. These are all the titles that are available for your site. So these are custom lists based on the software licenses your lab has available to it. So those are we have those set up when you register. This list is pretty long, so you might want to break this into, say, crystallography or NMR. These are just broken down by category. These aren't necessarily mutually exclusive. They're just titles that would be suited for these categories. And then we have a long sort of other list that includes things that are more utilities or dependencies of other titles. So I'll do a quick installation. So I can go here to all. Let's do a relatively small one. One of my favorite molecular placement tools, EPMR. So I can click EPMR. Shows me the version over here, 16.07.1. So I'm just going to drag this up a little bit. So I click the box, and now you see over here in the pending, I see I have an install pending, and it's colored green. So greens are the sort of pending installs. Pending updates are blue, and pending removals are red. And those colors are continued through our command line tools that I'll show you later. So I can hit apply changes. And so it's installing, it's updating my installation configuration. So those are the configuration files that we have in the environment that pre-configure all the environment variables and all the settings that you would need to run every application. In a lot of cases, that takes longer than the actual install. So EPMR is just a single binary, so it's pretty tiny. So there we go. All right, so great. So now I've got EPMR installed. If you click on a title, it brings up the description of it. You can go to the website, you can go to the manual. If it has forums or other resources available, then those will also be listed there. If there are technical notes, say a license needs to be configured, or there's some gotcha that we're aware of with a certain tool, we put those usually here in our technical description of the titles. These are the same as what you might see on our website for the software information. So I want to show in this pane down here, this is the show all package versions pane. So by default, it looks like this. So by default, it just shows you the default version that we have available, which is usually the latest version. But we have others available. So if you go to view, show all package versions, this box comes up and you get this additional view. So let's say I wanted to grab EPMR 1604 because I know that version works for me, or I wrote a paper where I used that version and I want to reproduce those results. So I can hit apply changes. It'll grab EPMR version 1604, and then it'll redo the installation configuration. And so those titles can live side by side in the installation, but you will need to configure in your shell which version you want to use. So I'll wait for the installation configuration to finish. So you can do that from the terminal, and that's sort of standard SBGrid version override kind of thing. But we have it also built in here, so you can go to edit configuration file. And if you have your text editor configured, And sorry, this is hiding from me underneath the, grab that guy, okay. Hiding under the Fuse control panel. So you can edit this to set your version. So this is the standard version setting that we have. It's on our wiki for version overrides. So if I wanted to use 1604, I can do that. 16.04, save that guy. And now I can go back here and I can hit the shell button and it'll open the SBGrid shell. And drag that out of my way. And you can see that I've got EPMR 1604 configured because I configured that as an override in my shell. So when you click the SBGrid shell button, it'll open an SBGrid shell with the environment initialized. In a site-specific install, you'd want to add that right into your like .bashrc or .cshrc, and you can do that here as well. Or you could use the install client and just open the SBGrid shell specifically. So if you're working in the terminal a lot and maybe you would just want to open your SBGrid shell from the button, it's mostly just a convenience, but it's there if you want to use it. Let's see. So how do we remove titles? So you can click on EPMR. You can just uncheck the versions you want if you have the view all versions open, or if you uncheck the box, it'll get rid of all versions, apply changes, and it'll remove EPMR from your installation. So you can get to help directly right from the client. So I'm going to let this update my install information. There's a couple ways to do that. You can go to the help menu and go to contact support, and this will open. Let's see. Sorry, that's the wrong window. Go to help, contact support. This will open the help page from our website in the browser, so you can put in your lab name and put in a description of your problem and let us know, and that'll open a ticket for us, and we'll get back to you and make sure that your problem gets fixed or addressed. There is also a if you go here, it'll take you to our website, so you can go and look for other information about recent software updates and like. Let's see, and one other thing that I wanted to show is that if you're having problems with your installation, one thing that's sort of a good first place to start is you can go to rebuild installation. So what rebuild installation does is it goes through all the packages that you have installed on your system, and it re-downloads and synchronizes those with our servers. So, and then it rebuilds your installation. So if you think you've somehow corrupted your install, or you have some sort of strange problem that you're not sure what's happening, you can go to rebuild installation. It can be slow, and it will, I think it warns you when you run it that it could be slow. Yeah, and gives you the option to abort. Turns out that it's actually not too bad. So, I mean, I'd recommend it, as I wouldn't shy away from running it. It's pretty speedy, actually. And so that's a good way to make sure your applications are all up to date with what we have on our production servers. So I'm gonna jump back to the slides now. Let me jump over to Fuse real quick and make sure I'm not missing any questions here. No, sorry about that. This is a little tricky. All right, looks good. All right, so now I want to talk a little bit about our command line tool. So we've been working on these a lot lately, just to try and add functionality and get these kind of ready for prime time with these new functionalities. So we have command line installers. These are available for Macs and Linux, macOS 10.9 up to the most recent, aside from 10.13, which will be the most recent next week. And then also for CentOS 6 and 7. And I know that they also work on Ubuntu and some other Linux distributions as well. So you could give that a shot. They allow you to do the same thing that I showed you in the graphical installer, but from the command line. So you can do selective installations of titles and versions. They're not automatically updated again, but you can set it up to schedule your updates so that you can use a cron mode that will run and automatically update the titles that you have installed, which can be handy. Generally speaking, we want users to, you want to have control over whether or not you do this, because you don't want your software stack to automatically update while you're on the go in-flight Wi-Fi somewhere between Chicago and San Francisco, right? So you want this to be under your control, but you could set it on a schedule on, say, a desktop or a machine that you feel confident just automatically updating. So I said that we have Mac and Linux. These are binaries. So we have both binaries and also a pure Python version. The binaries are really handy, though. I would go with those because they have no dependencies. You drop them into place. They run from anywhere. And again, if you want to get started with these, register at the URL below, and we can set you up with an account. So I'm going to jump over to my terminal again here and give you a quick tour of what this looks like. So move my window. So make this a little bigger. Maybe it makes it easier to see. All right. So I have the binary here in my directory. This is one of our latest builds. If you run just the binary, let me make this bigger so the help message shows. You can see that it has a bunch of different options, and they're sort of grouped here by around the theme. You can query what packages, what's installed, what has updates. You can manage your installation. You can load the shell in a way that's analogous to the shell button in the graphical version. And then you have some installation management tools. So the activate, that would be when you first get your credentials back from us, you can activate your installation. The admin is this sort of scheduled update mode that I was talking about. We have a cleanup mode so that the old packages that get installed and are obsoleted by us so that get cleaned out of your install as you activate or as you install and add new versions. And then we have these two features, which are, I think, kind of cool. You can save your configuration on one machine into a file, and it saves everything that you have installed, and you can reactivate your installation on another machine using that file. So you can either save your config for your machine so that you can quickly re-update it, or if you want to, or if you had multiple machines, you could save a configuration that you like, that you think is the best and most applicable to what you want, and then you could use that so that you didn't have to run each single one with the installation parameters for each machine. So I'll show you what some of these look like. So for each of these commands, there's a help. So if you do SBGrid list, will list all the packages that are available. So I'm on my Wi-Fi. No, I'm Ethernet here, so it's good. So you can see these are all the titles that you can install. They're grouped by what we call collection. So crystallography, NMR. The titles I already have installed are in green, just like in the graphical. The white ones are available but are not installed. And red are those that are queued for removal. Blue are those that have updates available. So if you do list-H, it will give you the sort of a basic help about what that command does. So this shows you that command lists the packages. Optional, you can do list collection. So I could do list NMR if I only wanted to see the NMR titles. And then you can see what you have installed with the installed command. So this will show you everything you've installed and the version that you have installed. I should note here that if you look at the installation here and the installation here, these are both on my machine. These are just running right off my Mac, my Mac laptop here. The graphical and the command line are interchangeable, so you can use both. I wouldn't recommend running both simultaneously because that could, but in theory it should work. But you can use both on the same machine, and they use the same API, so it all is compatible. See, the info command is particularly good, so you can do info EPMR. So this is analogous to the information pane that I showed you in the graphical. You can see the title, you can see the version that is the default version. So we can look for updates with the updates command. Updates will, and then the update command will update a specific package. So if there's an update available, you can do /SBGrid update EPMR, and if version 17 was out, you could install that. You can search through that long list with the search command. So if you wanted to find, say, eman, you could search. And so, yeah, so there's eman and eman2. So you can find those titles. You can also combine arguments. So you could do, you could combine titles. So you can do SBGrid, install, eman, eman2, EPMR, and rely on. Or you can put them all in a list. You can remove them all from a list. You can specify specific versions with the @ so you could do, you know, SBGrid info eman2. So we've got different versions there. So we could do install eman2 at 2.07. And you can combine these. You can add, you know, several in a row if you wanted to do multiple versions. I'm not going to install those because they're sort of large. It would take a little bit of time. So there's a number of options here, and you can go and take a look. I think I'll show you quickly what the saved sessions file looks like, or so. And you can name this whatever you like. But so it specifies what you have installed and your site parameters. So those are not real parameters, but you can specify here. You can see the titles that you have installed. So it's easy to save a configuration and then restore it or transfer it to other machines without having to either remember what all the titles are or go through and type it all or even script it all. So that's our command line installer. So that's the latest build. You might notice that your version, if you have one of the earlier builds, is a little bit different. So we're working to push this forward, and we plan to release a new build early next week that should have all of these new features built in. For both the command line tools and the GUI, we've got a couple of new things. For the GUI, we're working on search, so we want to put a search bar in so that you can search out the titles that you want, because the list here is pretty lengthy with 300 titles. So, I mean, you can break it down by group, but it would be great to be able to search. So we're going to add that. We're also putting in support for if your university is behind a proxy or you need some proxy support built in. We're adding in the ability to use proxies and to configure. We have a few different servers that are available. So based on firewall rules at certain sites, some of those are either available or not. So we have configuration built in so that you can select the server that works for your site. So that's it for a quick tour of the installation tools. I'm going to jump over here to the slides again. So running the SBGrid software, this is our wiki page. This is the best place to go to sort of get information about how to get started. Everything's installed at /programs or has a symlink from /programs to where it's installed. So you can always look in there to see where SBGrid is installed. All software is set up to be run from a terminal. So I've listed here what you should run to source the terminal depending on your shell. So if you're using Bash, you'd want to use this. SHRC for C shell users should use this. You can set that up in your configuration files so that it happens automatically, and you'll see the welcome message every time you open a terminal. Details on how to do that are all found on our wiki page. You'll get a message like this that shows that your environment is configured. Let's see. I showed you how to set versions already, so I'm going to skip this one. So that's it for the install tools. If you're looking for information, our wiki page is the place to go, or by all means email us, and we are happy to provide more info or help with any problems you're having.